Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 434 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday or Tuesday, maybe where you are? I don't even know anymore. How are you today, Richard?
It's Tuesday, midnight, but we're going to pretend it's Monday morning. Good morning, Seth. How are you doing?
I am doing well. We have some interesting topics to talk about today, but before we get into that, we got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. I know it's Monday where you are. How are you this fine Monday?
It's Monday. I'm awake. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well.
Good. I'm curious to see all the news, because I'll be hearing it fresh from you guys right now.
Yeah, so the cast for today, the big topic is Wizards did a stream last week talking about their new ban philosophy moving forward. With the changes to Standard, they also announced a BNR coming up next Monday, so we'll be able to presumably talk about some bannings then. So I want to get your opinions, not just on what we think will be banned in Standard, or what we want banned in Standard, but what we think about this new banning philosophy. So that's a big topic. There's also some littler topics that are kind of interesting. Someone did a ranking, somewhat scientifically, of showcase card styles that we wanted to talk about. How do you actually go about quitting Magic? Should you sell your cards if you decide to take a break or quit? What's the best Standard deck of all time? And then, of course, answering some fish mail. So that's the overview for today. Before we get into it, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you want to skip all the hassles of buy listing, well, Card Conduit lets you not do all the typing and spend all the time and do all the work. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to put in a little bit of work on your end, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort the cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And no matter which option you choose, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And right now, you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. We also have a giveaway going on at the moment. Gatherer's Tavern is giving away a Chandra Nalaar statue that looks pretty sweet. So if you want to get entered and try to get this statue, we'll put a link in the description and in the comments of the video on YouTube. So make sure to enter for that if you're interested. So anyway, let's talk some Magic, and let's start with, I think, the big news of the week, which is Wizards ban stream and ban philosophy. So unfortunately, there's not an article about this up yet. They did a stream. They're going to post an article alongside the BNR announcement explaining more of this next week. So here's the little TLDR. I actually watched the stream. So the TLDR is, there's a BNR specifically for Standard on Monday, next Monday, the 29th, I believe it is. This is just like a special bonus banning. Doesn't have anything to do with the actual philosophy. But the actual philosophy for bannings is this. Every summer, before preview season for the fall set, they're going to have a ban window where they can ban cards, whatever cards they want to. It seemed like the idea was kind of like, this is where you could shake up Standard. There's longer rotations. So if you got to get rid of something that would have rotated that's not, this is where you do it. Plus they can ban cards in any other format, and that is our one ban window of the year, except for with each set release there's a window 3 weeks after the set releases for emergency bannings. Essentially, the examples they used were like Felidar Guardian, the copycat combo, or Oku, cards that just like literally break the format. So don't expect the like nuts and bolts, format maintenance type changes there. It's from what they said, like egregious situations where something just goes horribly wrong. So that's how they're going to handle bannings, according to Wizards at this point. I'm very curious, before we get into Standard and what's going to get banned, what do you think of this philosophy? Because I know last week we were talking about, okay, longer Standard rotation means more bannings. Wizards is kind of saying the opposite. They're saying longer Standard rotation, and from the sounds of this, bannings once a year outside of super emergency situations. What do you guys think of this banning philosophy?
Is this not them trying to like put the players who are like looking to invest into buying paper cards and having them banned, like immediately? Is this to help those players feel at ease so that they could buy back, so they can feel safe buying into Standard? Like, I mean, I'm
sure that's a big part of it.
Like, if that's the case, I mean, great for them, but I think terrible for the format. If you're
Yeah,
going
that's
for
the thing.
3
Like,
years,
you gotta have a format that people want to buy into. Like, if your format's so
Right.
bad no one wants to play it, what does it matter how long cards stay legal?
like
I mean, I heard the opposite, right? Aren't they basically just doing whatever the heck they want once a year? So you essentially get this unknown rotation happening every year?
Basic, like that's what it sounded like. That the summer ban window would be the kind of like format maintenance, like get rid of the Kamigawa cards that haven't rotated. This year's the exception because they're doing this early one next week because everyone's complaining about the current format. But yeah, so there's gonna be one set time of year where you should be expecting bans.
But just not like overplayed cards, right? This is how they banned to shape the metagame into whatever way they want it to be, right? So if they felt
Yep.
like I don't know, lightning bolt or something when I needed to go, even though it wasn't egregious, they could just take it, right?
Yeah, they
So-
actually called out like we want the fall sets to be able to see play. They used this year as an example. Like some of the things we got to ban this year, like we want to make sure Wilds of Eldraine actually has a shot to like show up places, so we're gonna have to ban some stuff. So it does sound like that's kind of how they're looking at it. Yeah.
This sounds terrible. Like we like rotation was predictable, right? Like you could look on a calendar, you could be like, okay, these cards are going, these cards are staying. Now it's who knows what's going on, right? Like maybe half a set goes, or maybe like some tier 5 staple goes because they don't want to see it anymore. And then if emergency truly means emergency, standard will be static for an entire year.
Yep.
Or does emergency mean whatever they want it to mean? Like Fable is an emergency, get rid of Fable. Like Meat Hook Massacre is an emergency, get rid of Meat Hook. Like this sheds no light on anything, Seth. This was like the biggest non-announcement I've ever heard. Like,
yeah, not knowing the definition of emergency is definitely that
but
complicates
they said
things.
Palantir Guardian, right? That
Those were
literally
the
means,
examples
like,
they used. Yeah.
the format has to break, which we would say Meat Hook didn't break the format. We would say whatever they're banning on Monday did not break the format, like because it's really like we accidentally released Hogak, right?
Yeah.
Or we accidentally released. Oh,
And in some ways,
so,
it does.
Back to Crim's point, that's just like a year of bad standard. If you have bad standard at the minimum, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the concern. Like, look at our current standard. I think is a really good example. Like, would this be an emergency? I would say based on the examples that they gave, no. Like, you can't really point to a combo piece that's breaking the format or anything. So I don't know if we're in an emergency now, but at the same time, pretty much most people agree that standard's like not in a good place and it's not very fun and it hasn't changed. And these decks have been at the top of the meta since like November or October, like pretty much since last rotation. So does that mean you get like the worst of both worlds? You still have this uncertainty where the ban window comes and you're going to have to worry about like, is my Shieldred going to get banned randomly, my $80 card? So you still have that fear, even though it's not going to rotate for another year. But then you also get the downside of like standard stale for the entire year because we can't ban until the summer outside of like egregious emergencies. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of all this. The other thing is, like, does any of this even matter? This whole conversation of the last 3 weeks about changing standard rotation, about ban philosophy, should we even put any weight in this with how much things change in Wizards? Like, remember a few years ago when they decided to do, like, quicker rotation, and we didn't even get to the first quicker rotation before they, like, changed their mind and, like, backtracked on the whole thing? Like, should we take all this with a grain of salt to some extent because Wizards just changes their mind so quickly? Should we be expecting that to happen?
I think at this point now, we just wait and see what they do, because it's like yeah, this is kind of like a weird thing to say because I don't even know if it like answers anything, right? Like Richard had pointed out, it just doesn't feel like it's a big non-announcement so far, and I don't know. I mean, like I don't think I like that philosophy, because if you're extending standard, you should definitely be aggressively banning all the time. So especially when like now, I think now more than ever when you have like Arena where people are just playing standard all the time. They're playing standard all the time. So people are burning out faster. And so mid-range fests probably bore people or that some people don't like grinding it out. So this is where I think you got to be aggressively banning these cards out of these mid-range strategies, right? So, or else we'll just have a really long, like, stale standard. So
you're supposed to play Alchemy, Krim. Didn't you get that message? Did you not get the email?
Yeah. If
you like your magic to be fun and change,
player, yeah, play Alchemy.
Again, God, I don't know. I don't even. Do you think standard is something that you even fix anymore? Like, regardless of this announcement, right? Like, because if you, it does kind of come back to, like, Arena and things like that, right? Like, you have access to a standard client now that you can play all the time, like 3 to 4 times the games you probably would have normally, right? And I don't know, doesn't that cause burnout faster now? I don't even know if it's necessarily like the format's bad. Like, the funny thing is, I don't even think this format is anywhere near bad as any of the worst standards, right? So, like, this is so far from it. I can't tell if it's just because now there's more burnout because it's so easy to get games in.
I mean, I think that's definitely a part of it, right? Like, you do get to play way more, and I don't know, it's just so opposite of what I would want out of standard. Like, I would want standard to, like, focus on arena and, like, more changes. Like, I don't think any of this is gonna, I would be surprised if any of this works anyway. Like, the idea that we're gonna go back to, like, tons of people playing standard, like, I'm not sure this is the problem. 2 years, 3 years, like, I think there are other things going on, like Commander and, like, Arena, that are keeping people from, like, playing a lot of standard at their LGSs. I don't think this really changes it, and I think it hurts all those people that are playing standard on Arena. Like, I've seen some videos, like, CGB does tons of standard content, and he was doing a video about how this is just a straight up L for anyone who's an Arena standard player. Like, we gotta take one for the team for paper players out there, but there aren't paper players. Why are all of us digital players taking the L for something that doesn't exist at this point? It's so weird to me.
This is like WotC saving, like, papers, like letters, like,
yeah.
Here's how gaming works. Okay, like, a new game releases, it's all hyped up, it's all over Twitch, it's all over every ad, and then we, like, no life play 80 hours in, like, 1.5 weeks. And then we complain that the game is too short and there's no content and there's nothing to do for the next, like, 3 months. Like, that's how gaming works in 2023, right? Like, people just want to binge until they burn out and then wait for the next cycle of releases. Except we're talking, like, 1 year to 3 years using the Wizards model here. I don't know why they're dragging down digital Magic to save, paper standard. Essentially, right? Like, their paper format right now is EDH, is Commander, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like, any solution should fix both at the same time, rather than, like, lose your remaining digital players. And I don't know. I still feel Wizards trying to eat too much of the pie. They're trying to get their digital money and their paper money at the same time, and that's very difficult, and you're essentially asking digital players to play at the speed of paper players.
So let me put my WotC hat on here, and how would you respond to this? So you say that, and Wizard says, well, we are supporting both. Digital players are just supposed to play Alchemy. Like, but we're focusing on digital. You just aren't supposed to play standard. You're supposed to play Alchemy. Like, from Wizards' perspective, is that what they're thinking? Like, if you have, I almost think that's what Wizards would say. Like, these aren't contradictory. Like, digital has Alchemy, paper has standard or whatever. Doesn't make sense to me, but I could see from Wizards' perspective that being their argument. Like, if Alchemy was a booming, thriving, successful, beloved format, I wonder how much differently people would feel about this. If people would just be like, oh, like, whatever, like, I'll just play Alchemy. But because Alchemy got so messed up with its launch and is so disliked, like, that's a tough sell. Do you think this is gonna, I don't think you were here for the cast we talked about this, Karim. Do you think this is gonna get more people to play Alchemy? Like, if that is Wizards thinking, like, digital, play Alchemy, we'll do this for paper, do you think it'll work? Are we gonna see a renaissance of Alchemy because of this announcement from people that want their formats to change?
I don't think so. Because there's too many people in Magic that won't open up to that idea. If it doesn't do what it does on paper, right, then I don't want it. And that's unfortunately a reality that I think will keep the game anchored I think in like whether or not, you know, where like the game goes forward, like in the digital space. It can't truly be a digital game if, you know, like it can't update itself like a digital game, right? And I don't know. I don't think it's going to also bring more people to Alchemy. I just don't think it's going to bring people to Alchemy. Just the player base has already shown that that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it seems like it would have happened already if that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
So Wizards stated that.
Oh, go ahead.
That they when they made the original announcement before the stream, they said they didn't give an announcement because they wanted feedback. So given that we're a bit confused by their current announcement, like what would your suggestion be if you had to run BNR for WotC? Like, would we be aggressively banning every set? Would we? I don't know what it'd be. Just do nothing. Go back to old standard where nothing banned unless it was like Jace the Mind Sculptor. Like what philosophy would we take?
I think at this point, I mean, like, I guess let's see here. If you don't ban aggressively, right? If they're just gonna let things play out, standard's gonna be a bad spot. If they aggressively ban stuff, consumers don't trust them to buy into the cards. So standard sucks there. So it seems like no matter what, standard's going to be in a weird spot for like a majority of people, right? So I think at this point, why not just aggressively ban, like almost like every 3 months, 4 months, unban stuff, ban stuff, literally set release or preview season, ban something. Or like, yeah, set release, ban something, unban something, and just do that every time. Now when you have so much product coming in and out, just drop a ban literally every set.
I'm with, like, so assuming we're going to stick with the 3-year rotation thing, which I think goes, like, that is one of the big issues here, is like it's just going to take longer for cards to leave standard. So if they're married to that and that's not going to change, I would be with Grim. Like, I would prefer, instead of like emergency ban window every set where you only ban, you know, something that's truly egregiously broken, like Copycat Combo, I would rather have that be a window where it's like, you know, Rakdos is at the top of the meta. We would like this new March of the Machine set to see some play in standard. So we're going to, like, you know, ban a couple Rakdos cards or whatever. So maybe March of the Machines will see play. I would like to see a much lower bar. I know Wizards, from what they've said, is looking at it from, like, trying to make paper standards successful. If I thought that was actually possible and these changes would make paper standard thrive, then maybe that would be different. But I just have zero optimism that paper standard is going to thrive as a result of these changes. So I think you're like harding the format for like what I see is like very unlikely to get any gain out of it. But I don't know, how would you handle it, Richard? How many bannings would you like to see?
0. What if they started? What if they started standard with like the weakest set you've ever imagined? Like, I don't know what we'd call it, like Dragon's Maze.
Homelands.
And then by the time you get to the last set of standard, you're on Eldraine. So like you just keep ramping up the power, so you're guaranteed that the new set will actually see play. Like, because when they try to even out the power, they miss, and if they miss low, then like no cards will ever see play, and they've missed low like 4 sets in a row now. So if you just really ramp up the power, like as standard progresses, then you rotate after Eldraine and you go back to like Dragon's Maze. Like,
but then don't you run into that same issue though? Because then like you have Eldraine that's super high powered, and then you want to reset, so then you go back to Dragon's Maze. Won't Dragon's Maze like see no play?
Like a hard reset where you go back to like 1 set standard.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, so I guess technically that would work.
Are you talking about like where like 8 sets would fully rotate?
And then you'd have like block constructed for like 1 season, right? And then you'd have 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, whatever, until you reach Eldraine powers, and then you cut again.
Like so I guess with the extended year on the 9th set, 8 sets rotate out.
The whole format rotates.
Yeah, just go back to what?
Yeah, so 9th set would be a rotation to all 8 sets, right?
All gone, yeah. Everything's gone, start over. Yep.
Yeah.
The problem would be, like, I don't think one set standard would be that fun. Have you ever played, like, remember when block used to be a thing? And there would be, like, one set block formats? A lot of those were, like, super busted
bad.
and, like, not diverse at all because one thing would be better than everything. So that, I think, would be the drawback. Although, I like
What if you keep some core sets or something? Like you gotta keep some base set around to make sure standard's fully fleshed out.
So then what do you think about something like how, like, I dare I say this, the H word, Hearthstone, right? Like there's a core set, right? There's like these core sets for each class. The cards don't rotate, right? They're just always, like, if they ban from the class pool, they adjust it however, but like Magic has what is essentially a core set that doesn't rotate. So, like, there's always negate, there's always duress, there's always these things, right? And then, I guess, and then add to that pool, and then everything drops off on the 9th set around those pools.
That could be interesting.
Is that what you mean?
I could get behind something like that, I think. I would still be worried about the super small standards not being that fun, but still, like, I would rather have the change, I think, and deal with that than... I'm just afraid there's not going to be enough churn or enough change in the format with this new setup, I think is a pretty big concern. And I guess we'll find out more on Monday when we see how they actually handle this first round of banning. So I guess that's the next question. We know BNR is coming. What are you actually expecting to happen next Monday? Like, are they going to ban 15 cards and have a pseudo rotation of standard? Are they going to ban just Fable and, like, trust that that's enough? Like, what are you actually expecting? Like, we know it's only standard. They actually crim for you. Someone asked about Pioneer. I don't know if you watched the stream, but they asked about Pioneer bannings, and they literally laughed like, Pioneer, no, we're not banning anything at Pioneer. Pioneer's great. So I guess we're going to deal with Nykthos for a little while longer. But as far as standard, what do you think will change?
Wait, are you asking me about standard or Pioneer? Sorry,
well, Pioneer, we know. There. Pioneer, they're not changing anything. They made that clear.
That's
so what do you think?
Extremely unfortunate.
This BNR, at least. But this is only standard. So what are we expecting in standard on Monday? Ban-wise?
Fable. Maybe Bankbuster.
Okay, Fable's a given, right? Like, I would...
Right.
Like, if they only ban one card, it's Fable. I can't...
Although...
Is there any world where it doesn't get banned? What is the percent chance that funny. Fable is not on the BNR? Like, it's got to be 99 point something that it's banned, right?
If it isn't all pretty much 100%, then they would probably be pretty much out of touch entirely, right? like I mean, although whether or not, like, so what I think will get banned and whether or not the philosophies of why we ban certain cards, I don't know if I agree. Like, I know Fable's really good, and obviously it's like the backbone, it's the glue, it's what allows Grixis to play a 4-color black spell, right? I mean, a 4-pip black spell. You get to ditch Atraxa. You do a lot of setting up, right? You do a lot of looting, and then you have the third chapter where now it's like anything comes down, it's a win con, right? So it does it all, but like, isn't standard supposed to have a best card? Are we just going to keep banning every best card that exists? I know the play pattern is like a problem, but like, do you just ban it because it's good?
I mean, my argument would be you ban it because it's so heavily played, which I've had this conversation with people on Twitter, and people are, well, it's not though. Like, if you go back historically through standard metas, having the best deck be, depending on how you count, like Rakdos versus Grixis, somewhere between 35 and like 50% of the meta. Like, historically, that's super rare. Historically, that's the, like, Oko's in the format, we're gonna ban things, or like Omnath's in the format, we gotta ban things. Like, usually the best deck's like 20% of the meta, maybe 25. So I feel like this is just like the numbers are so high that it would merit action.
Two things though, right? The numbers are high, yes, but is this also not like the outcome of an arena world? And like where, you know, like the best deck, do I want to spend my money? Do I want to spend my wild cards, right? Or because why would I spend my wild cards on a bunch of bad cards, right? So everyone just plays the best deck. So, I mean, I think now more than ever, right? When everyone's like, I don't know, I'm just going to build whatever's good. it's gonna spike the numbers, right? It's gonna spike the numbers, and then on top of that, like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. Even though this is like the highest number, or like it is an unusually high number, it doesn't feel worse than like it's nowhere near like not pithing needle, skull clamp. It's nowhere near like, like Eldraine Oko standard. It doesn't feel anywhere as miserable as that. It just feels like there's a powerful card. There's a good batch of like the powerful cards all over the place. Black has a lot of good cards. Like there's, I don't know. It just doesn't feel that bad of a format to me. Everyone's saying standard's awful, and don't get me wrong. I think that standard has its problems, but I don't think this is like to the boiling point where it's like, oh my god, what's happening,
So standard is actually really good. The problem with standard is it hasn't changed in 4 sets, like meaningfully. The play pattern is essentially the same. So people are getting bored of playing the same thing over and over. Not necessarily that the gameplay pattern is like horrendous or anything. Yeah, it's like mid-range fest, but like I don't think that's a big problem. And to the original question is, can they get away with just banning Fable? And I would say no, right? Because after banning Fable, Rakdos probably still the best deck, right? Like maybe you knock a few percentage points off of it, but you'll play Rakdos still, and it'll still be very good, and standard will feel the exact same. So I think they gotta actually like slice off like a large chunk of standard to get cards from March of the Machine to Aftermath, to get cards from that like popping up. They gotta actually take like a big swath of cards off of standard. Otherwise, you're still gonna go Bloodtide Harvester to Sheoldred into Invoke into Chandra. Like you'll still do the same stuff, and you still will not play whatever hidden gems there are in the last like 4 sets that haven't seen any light of day.
I do think banning Fable will do more than people maybe think. Like, if you really think through what the card does, like, banning Fable makes the Reanimator strategies a little worse. Like, it's harder to get a Troxan Italian in the graveyard. I think it makes Sheoldred a lot worse, because Sheoldred dies to removal, and the big reason I think Sheoldred lives so much is you have to spend 2 removal. Like, Fable is 2 must-kill threats. Like, if you do not kill either half of that, it snowballs into a win, so you have to kill both halves of that, which makes it a lot harder to have removal left over for Sheoldred by the time it comes down. I think Invoke becomes, like, harder to cast, it becomes slower. I would still advocate for a shakeup, especially in the context of no rotation. Like, if we knew we were getting a rotation in the fall, I would feel much differently about this. I would probably still like to see Fable ban just for something to change for the summer. But if I knew we were getting normal rotation in September, I would even be fine to just bite the bullet and like play Modern for the summer or whatever, play other formats for the summer when I get bored of Standard. But knowing there's not rotation, I think they need to make bigger changes. Like, I'm actually hoping they're super heavy-handed with this ban list and ban like 10 or 15 cards to have like a pseudo rotation. Not because Standard necessarily needs that, but because I think, or needs that now, but I think it needs that over the course of the next 16 months or whatever, since these cards aren't rotating. So I would like to see Fable in a white card, in a Rafine. I would like to, a huge one would be, and they're not going to do this, but I think banning the Triomes would actually have a massive impact on the format. Like the mana is so ridiculously good right now that I think that is part of like, remember the Jace Vryn's Prodigy standard, when it was all these like 4 and 5 color mid-range piles of the best cards. The mana makes that kind of possible, and I feel like we're kind of in that same place where your 3-color deck can play Invoke Despair or whatever, and every deck can cast a Troxa. So if we go for shakeups, I would like to see something like that.
I mean, so yeah. Well, so it sounds like we all pretty much know, though, that like Fable is going to eat it, right?
Yeah.
At the banning. We know Fable's
We don't know that for sure. We don't know what Watsy has up there.
I guess like it'd be one of the weirdest things. It's like watching Steph Curry miss a free throw or something like that, right? Like it's like, so like at this point, like it's just like not ever, like there's no way, right? Like, so
what if they reprinted Fable in the next supplemental product?
Oh god.
No, we can't touch the Fable. It's gotta be Bloodtide Harvester.
No, because they'll just do the weird Stoneforge Mystic thing, right? Like, oh yeah, you can't, it's banned, but unless you're playing with just the precon. then it's fine.
What's
That weird banning. I think after that though.
Yeah. What's number 2?
Do you want anything else outside of that? Seth, it seems like you said you want Rafine, you want like
Okay, so if I was actually gonna look at like a list, so I think Rakdos is the big problem right now. So I would want to see like Fable gone. I wouldn't shed a tear over Invoke Despair or Shieldred being banned, honestly, even though I don't think they necessarily need to be banned. But if we're looking at like, we want Rakdos to no longer be the best deck in the meta after it has been for so long, maybe you got to take separate steps to do that. Bankbusters in like a ridiculous amount of decks, even though it's a fair card, I can see an argument for that. And then once you get past Rakdos, then you get to the like Reflector Mage stage of bannings, or the like Rampaging Ferocidon, where it's like, okay, we're hitting Rakdos really hard. Is Esper just gonna become the new Rakdos if we ban 3 Rakdos cards? Or is Mono White gonna just be the best deck in the format by a million miles if we ban Rakdos that hard? So that's when you get to like the second level of like, do we need to ban Wedding Announcement or Wandering Emperor? Do we need to ban Rafine or like something from Esper to make sure that these decks don't feel that void of being like the dominant force?
I don't see a reason why you would ban Shieldred or Invoke. I think that those cards are fine, right? Like a 5 mana sorcery spell, like in quad black in a post, let's just say in this hypothetical case that Fable eats it, totally fine. It's fine now. It's been fine. It's because Rakdos has had a critical mass of good cards, right? So it's like whatever. Their finisher is Invoke, but I would say the only thing that would warrant it, I think, outside of Fable is just Bankbuster, even though I myself think it could stay, but that's only just, like, I see Bankbuster going because it can fit in any deck. It can fit into any deck.
But would you be happy next Monday if you woke up and the new metagame was Rafine, followed by Mono White midrange / control, followed by watered down Rakdos?
Yeah.
Well, that's the exact same standard. Like,
No,
sure,
but
you don't see as much Rakdos, but you're seeing the exact same decks, the exact same strategies, throwing some Atraxa Reanimator somewhere in there. Like,
I
is
mean,
that what we really want? Do we
okay,
really care?
what is the problem then? Is the problem the fact that like there's powerful cards, or is the problem that every deck is a mid-range deck?
I see the problem is I want Standard to change at some point. And without there being a rotation, I don't see an end in sight. Like, I don't see how without a number of bannings, like, isn't there a risk we just do the same thing for an entire another year? And like, Wild Eldraine comes, but it makes no impact. And then Ixalan comes, but it doesn't see any play. And then like, I don't know. I guess the thing that worries me about them saying there's one ban window a year, and then other than that, it's only for like emergencies, is doesn't that kind of push you to being super aggressive in that window? Because what happens if Eldraine comes and it doesn't have an impact on the format and you're still playing only Rakdos decks or whatever? Like,
then I don't have to wake up in a cold sweat, because right now, Seth, I'm really afraid of what happens when Eldraine comes. And that's maybe because of trauma from the last one, but like, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, at this point, maybe that's a good thing that Eldraine isn't that popular.
I mean, I think Standard's role in Magic has traditionally been the format that changes. That's kind of like
right. That's
the appeal of it. That's like, yeah, that's the gimmick of Standard. And if you don't want change, then you don't play Standard. I'm just worried that we're losing that or whatever, like with all these changes.
I do think that the banning has to happen more aggressively, as I mentioned. But like, so if you're trying to shake it up, right? The goal is to shake it up and actually see March of the Machines make an impact and all that stuff, right? Then we have to, like, is that not a design flaw? Yes. Then? Because like everything does everything now. The reason why you haven't seen pure control is because before you could let a threat through, right? There was things that there's a few key targets that you could just like, those are the big no's. Everything else is whatever. But now everything is an Avengers level threat. Right? So everything is a game ender. Everything is the Thanos. So I just don't see that happening with one ban. I don't even see that happening with more than that. I like, if let's say they banned all those cards, then we're at this weird mishmash Frankenstein of a format that wasn't meant to be. And then it's like it could be even worse. And not in the power level like too high, in that we have the Ixalan where the power level's too low and it's miserable. And it's like a slow, miserable game, or everyone's just mono red and soldiers.
I mean, I think we're going to have the weirdness no matter what, because they mentioned that, like, Eldraine or whatever wasn't designed with this 3-year rotation schedule in mind. Like, when they designed Eldraine, their expectation was that Kamigawa would have rotated, Streets of New Capenna would have rotated. So we're already going to have a standard that is not how Wizards designed it to be. I'm curious, Krim, let's say you knew with 100% certainty after Monday, no bannings in standard until till this time next year. No bannings. No, you cannot change standard no matter what. Would that change your answer on what you'd want banned at all? Because I feel like that's how Wizards is looking at it, is we ban, and then for the next year, unless we accidentally print, memory jar in standard or something, like, where there is no change, no bannings allowed. Like, would you want more bannings in that context? I know we both agree we would rather have more aggressive bannings, but Wizards doesn't seem to be thinking about it the same way we are.
That's true, and if we're treating it as there's no bannings for a year, then sure, I would we can ban a lot. We ban like 6+ cards if you wanted, right? And the question here is, does that change? Will that change like this mid-range meta? Like, does the banning of 6+ cards, right? Does that all of a sudden make, I don't know, whatever the thingy that costs white XX and can like incubate, right? And then you can tap it to like hatch something.
Yes.
Does that card all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Is that the game ender? Is that now like, oh my god, I'm free?
Ban until Progenitor Exarch is good. That's my new motto.
Yes. Okay, so that is the new. If the goal is to ban until Progenitor Exarch takes off, then okay, we've got some time. We've got a few things to work on. Like, I'll say that March of the Machines is too fair. It sounds weird to say that, but it's like these cards just do like, yeah, there's versatility and like the answers and stuff. Like, it's wild. Think about how good, and this is, again, it kind of leads back to the design philosophy, because I think that cards nowadays just they do everything. Like, you have the best answers right now in this standard, and pure control doesn't exist.
Do you think March of the Machines is too fair, or do you think that like Kamigawa is too strong? And if everything was March of the Machines power level or whatever, we would be in some standard utopia of diversity and everything would be wonderful and we'd have 10 different playable decks. Like, do you think it's that March of the Machines not good enough, or other sets are too good?
I think that it's like too many cards do too many things. So like, maybe it's not that it's, because like March of the Machines still has I guess it needs to match the power level of probably March, because I don't know, like, though there's a lot of text for a set that probably might be the wordiest set of all time, a lot of these are not worth playing. It's just like a bunch of vanilla creatures. Yeah, like there's a lot of nothing soup right now, and I think that's just because the nature of the older sets, like the cards are just too efficient. They're yeah.
What do you think, Richard?
Grim's exactly right. Like, we're trying to fix things with bandages. Like, remember, you're not supposed to ban stuff. And if everything is a Ragavan, which it is, right? Like Grim said, like, if something resolves and you don't deal with it, you lose. That's a problem, right? Like, that actually, so in terms of balancing, that's a problem, right? Like, everything is so efficient and does so much stuff. Gameplay-wise, it's not good. Like, if you stumble due to variance, because it's Magic the Gathering, then you lose, right? Because you can't catch back up, because not only did you stumble, but your opponent accrued like 2 more advantages in the time you stumbled. So remember when we played vanilla creatures? Remember we just played like, stuff that like, oh, I could take 3 hits and then, clean up with a sweeper. Like, good luck, right? Like, you can't do that anymore, right? Because it's gained the opponent like 16 life, made like 8 treasures and whatever, right? Like, you can't do that kind of stuff anymore. So maybe we just forsake standard until they adjust their design philosophy. Until, like, you go no bannings and you just suck it up and take bad standard and hope that they design new cards that don't all immediately see eternal play because they're so powerful, right? Or cards designed for Commander that, oops, standard players figured out how to play this card, and now it's insanely broken because it was meant for Battlecruiser Magic. Yeah, so the answer is probably like fixed design rather than how do we, carefully maneuver our ban hammer to like fix everything that's happened. Like the idea that Wilds of Eldraine was designed without all these sets in the format, and then now they're just like whatever, they're all coming out together. like this format is so screwed, Seth. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god, it's like if we designed a set, right?
Well, probably not
like,
that bad. You don't want to see my set.
we'll just let B&R handle this, right? And then B&R is like, what do you want me to do? Right?
I will say I definitely agree that design needs to improve, and that's the real fix to all this. Like, that's how you make these problems. Like, bannings can maybe improve things over the short term, but if you don't change the design process, you're just going to end up in the same place again and again and again. So definitely agree with both of you there. I will say, I think this wraps back around to the arena top thing that Krim brought up. I do not envy Wizards in the current era of having to try to design for standard where people are just jamming endless games, which, makes it easier to solve the format or get stale on arena. They're also trying to make cards for older formats. They're trying to make Commander cards. They're trying to do all that and mash it together and make paper standard playable, which maybe they have an impossible task. Like, I don't want to come down too hard on the WotC side because I do think they can definitely improve and there's things they can do and should do to improve. But at the same time, can they even fix this? Because there's so many variables and competing forces. Like, there's so much they're trying to do each set and each card. Like, is it even possible to fix?
I think it's now an impossible task because, for those exact reasons, right? Like, you're now more than ever, because now you're doing this 3-year thing, and it's just like, okay, well, standard's longer, and we're trying to still design with paper at our core, but we have a digital client that everyone uses. So it's a little bit of like they're already too far down this road. And example, imagine if next set, Wilds of Eldraine, everything's like a 2/2 bear, vanilla, right?
Yes.
They've already gone too far into this direction. Everything is a word soup. Everything's does 50 things. You kind of don't go back, right? You can try to gradually go back, but that doesn't work with a 3-year standard, right? Like, if you try to dial back, it's gonna be real weird. And then as you dial back, you'll have what we have, right? March of the Machine, not played. Everything prior to it, still played, right? Like, when I talked to someone like pro players at Minneapolis, and they were just like, yeah, I'm playing Grixis, not a single new card needed. Like it's just like, I don't know how you do this. I think this is an impossible task, like you had mentioned. I
mean, it's impossible while keeping profits high.
Yeah.
If they just reduce the cost of standard, no one would care. Like, if you all had full collections, if we were all Saffron Olive, no one would care, right? You'd be like, shake up standard every 30 seconds.
Ban
right?
every
card.
Yeah.
I got every card imaginable. I can switch decks whenever I want. So if they drive the cost of paper decks down to, say, $25, you wouldn't care.
Yep.
You'd be like, oh, Grixis banned. Let me just go buy another deck. I'm good to go. So part of it is the fact that it's a $300 deck that people are worried about, getting obsoleted. That's the problem, right? So if they just drive down the price, if Arena allowed you to actually grind a full collection in a sane manner, you wouldn't care as much when your deck got banned. So part of it is fixing all of this while keeping their profits high. If they really wanted to fix it, I believe they have easier ways to get it done.
I mean, if you want to take a super, super cynical view at this, you would say this change, maybe is designed to make cards more expensive. Like, they stay legal longer and they're going to go out of print. And Wizards during the stream mentioned, people asked about challenger decks. Cards are going to be around. We need cheaper cards for standard. And they said they don't have anything planned so far about doing challenger decks this year or something. So hopefully they approach that side of things as well. If they are going to do this and keep cards legal stronger, I think they also have to try to like make more challenger decks. Do something like, remember the World Championship decks, those gold border decks? Could you imagine like legal versions? Like, here's decks people played at the Pro Tour. Give us $50 and you can actually have one of these to go play at your FNM or something. Like things like that, I think would go a really long way towards getting people into Standard if that's the goal. But wow, we spent 50 minutes talking about Standard bannings. All right, lightning round. There's a couple other topics I really wanted to hit up here. Any final thoughts on Standard or bannings before I move on?
Well, I got one question because I really want to know. Tell me how many cards you think will be banned on Monday. Not which cards, just how many cards.
I think my guess 2. Actually, if they're okay, like Seth asked earlier, if it's not banning for a week, like a year, I think we have the red enchantment, something Kakazan, and then you have Fable, then you have Bankbuster. Like if they're trying to ban for a year, I think they're gonna try to pick something out of almost every color except for blue and green because nothing matters there. And then maybe I guess like Rafine. And
so how many cards is that?
5.
5?
Oh, I was actually gonna go with 5. I'll go 7. 5 was gonna be my low end. I'll go 7. I'll go. They go deep. What do you think, Richard?
I think 5, but it should actually be 15 or 20.
Yeah.
So if they do 20, I will have renewed faith in them that they are actually doing dramatic things to fix the format. If they do the safe 3 to 5, then it's like same old. Like, you know, I'll check back in Eldraine.
Yep. Well, it'll be interesting, and I think the BNR should be out before next week's podcast, so hopefully we'll be able to see how our predictions went during next week's cast. But anyway, let's hit up a couple other topics really quick. Richard, there was a pretty interesting Reddit post this week talking about showcase card styles and trying to use some math to actually compare them and figure out which one was the most popular. What did it show? What was this post about?
All right, I actually really like this post. So it's ranking all the showcase styles. So basically all the frames. So like the storybook frame from Eldraine, the god frames from Kaldheim and stuff like that. But the way they did it was math, where they just take the average price of showcase divided by the average price of the non-showcase version. So it's actually reflecting like how much premium people put on these versions. Now, obviously, there might be some bias towards the older sets because the older sets will have had more time to appreciate. But at the top, we have Eldraine, Kaldheim, Arcavios. Is that Strixhaven? What's Arcavios?
Yeah, that's Strixhaven.
Strixhaven.
Kaladesh, Ikoria. So those are the top 5. And the bottom 5 would be Phyrexia, Ixalan, Amonkhet, Tarkir, and Ravnica. And Phyrexia is interesting. It's like actually under 1, which means showcase versions are cheaper than the normal version. Which I know this firsthand, man. The Phyrexian language cards, you can't read them. You need to actually read cards nowadays.
I mean, I guess that's also like Amonkhet's near the bottom as well. And that was another one where one of the big criticisms was like the font is very difficult to read. That was the Hazaret the Pervert set because the font was so bad you couldn't actually tell what the card names were.
Hazaret the what?
Hazaret the Pervert is what the
card word.
Like,
okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. What about Ixalan? That's the one that surprises me because personally, I always thought that was one of the cooler showcase styles. I'm surprised to see that so low.
I see what they were trying to go for, right? Is that not the medallion of like Jurassic Park? It's meant to be this like archaeologist, like, you know, like kind of like, oh, cool. But it's like, dude, when I see that on the board, I don't think that's a giant Atali. I don't think that's a big dinosaur stomping its way towards me. It just looks like an enchantment or an artifact. I confuse it with a mana rock half the time. Like it's just like, dude, it does not showcase the creature.
Yeah. No, that is true. It looks like a coin or something. Like you found a penny with Galta and Mavrin on it or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, the post is interesting. Was there anything else that stuck out to either one of you as being just like odd or different than your personal takes on the showcase styles?
I'm surprised that that Eldraine is the most popular.
I really like the Eldraine style. I guess I might be a little surprised it's number one, but that's one of my personal favorites. So I guess I'm happy that it's there.
Power level kind of matters. So even though it's price based, but like the more played the card, the more you're willing to pay to bling it out. So there is some power level, I think, baked into the prices here, even though they are normalized. So like a crappy card divided by the crappy card will like equal out. But yeah, I think Eldraine is actually my personal favorite of all of these.
I also thought it was interesting, like, if you actually look at the chart, there's the price ratio, but then there's also favorability, which was they actually did like a poll of their users and had people vote on or rank the card styles, and it actually lines up pretty well. Like the money ratio actually lines up pretty well with people's subjective rankings, which I thought was interesting.
The market is efficient, Seth.
It is, apparently. All right, speaking of the Magic market, I got a question for y'all that came from Mark Rosewater's blog. So Mark Rosewater was asked, what advice do you have for someone who's considering quitting the game? And his advice was, don't get rid of your cards. There's something wrong with taking a break, but a majority of players later return and their greatest regret is having gotten rid of their cards. This is something I have told people many, many times in the past. When people ask, I'm thinking of taking a break, I'm thinking of quitting, my default had always been, hold on to your cards because you're going to want them. I've heard those horror stories. I have friends that are like, I had a Black Lotus back in 1993 and then it was sold at a garage sale or something and I wish I had it. Like, you hear those stories. As I saw this post, so I started thinking about it, and I started to wonder if this is still good advice in 2023. Like, I know there's sentimental value. If you have some commander deck you love or some special signed card or whatever that means something to you, of course you should keep it. But purely from a financial perspective, do you still think it's worth holding onto your cards if you quit the game? I'm coming around to the idea that the answer, like, if I was actually going to quit, I think I would sell essentially all my cards, because I would think there's so much power creep now. There's so many secret layers, so many reprintings. I don't think it's like it was 10 or 20 years ago where you would think, oh, the cards are going to go up in value anyway, so whatever. I would think I should sell them because the prices are probably going to go down and I would just rebuy those cards if I came back to the game anyway. But does that advice still hold in 2023, you guys think? Like, should you hold, if you quit the game, should you hold your cards or sell your cards?
It comes down to why you're quitting the game. I think the answer still holds true because
they played against your Oathbreaker deck a few too many times, Grim.
Yeah. Then yes, no, I genuinely think that like why sell your cards, right? Unless, okay, if it's a money thing and you need the cash, whatever, the burst in cash now, then that makes sense, sure. Yeah. But like other than that, at some point, if you'd like to come back to the game, especially as Magic moves towards a more casual friendly space with Commander being the focal point, why sell your cards? Like, if you're like if it's a financial thing, then yes, but otherwise, why sell your cards? What is the upside? You'll always have these cards to come back to.
So there's someone out there with a fully blinged out foiled modern Jund deck just crying.
Is that you, Richard? I feel like, is that you?
These Tarmogoyfs that used to be like $100 are now like $8. These Lilianas are like nothing. I think Seth is right with the power creep. Like, when I went back to look at my old Commander decks, I'm like, these cards are all trash. And if I upgrade it, it costs me like another like $300. I might as well just go out and buy a Warhammer pre-con. And I'll be like right back at it at like a higher power level. So I don't know, like, I definitely don't hold modern/legacy decks, whereas in the past I would hold on to them forever. Like, my legacy decks are laughably unplayable now. The only thing maintaining value there are the dual lands. Like, everything else is like basically rotated out of their respective decks. So
right,
I don't know. Like, if you're trying to come back in like 3 months, then don't sell your cards.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right. But if you think you're quitting, I don't know. Like, I think by the time you come back in 2 years, like, Modern Horizons 4 will be out, and whatever modern deck you're playing now is obsoleted. So you might as well just pick up the new Modern Horizons 4 cards. If you have reserve list cards, then hold on to them. But yeah. I can't imagine holding on to, what's the most expensive? Like, let's say Atraxa or something. Like, almost guaranteed there'll be a new Reanimator target in like 2-3 years that everyone will be playing. So like, there's no point in holding those cards, I don't think.
But is that better than like not like example? Like it depends, right? If I'm playing Modern or whatever, then sure, maybe I'd sell those cards. But like my collection as a whole, no way. Like I don't think there's a reason. Like if you're playing mostly Commander, who cares about power creep? Who cares about like the efficiency of your card? At least you have something to get back into Magic and play with, as opposed to just buying a whole new collection.
So here would be my full answer. I would hold reserve list cards. If I have the space, I would also hold cheap cards. I think like the cards that are already bulk, there's not much of a downside to stick them in a closet. And then when Chain of Smog or something comes along and is a $20 card, you benefit from it and there's still going to be bulk, worst case a few years from now. So I would hold on to those. So really cheap cards, old reserve list cards, anything with sentimental value. And then I would probably set aside a deck or two. Like, I don't think I would sell all of my Commander decks. I think I would want a couple Commander decks that I like around just to like play with friends or who knows. The cards I would really want to sell though is the stuff that Richard was talking about, like the Shieldreds and the Taraxas, because I really think that they're just going to get reprinted and they're going to get power crap. Like Tarmogoyf is probably the best example of this. Like 5-7 years ago, it was maybe more than that, maybe 10 years ago now. It was a $200 card and everyone thought it would be like the most expensive card forever. If you quit the game back in 2015, you would be like, well, I'm going to hold my Tarmogoyfs. Now it's like a $15 card or whatever. Like, so I would lean towards selling that stuff personally. I think it's an interesting question.
Even infallible cards, right? Jace the Mind Sculptor, Snapcaster Mage, Cryptic Command. Like, cards you think will be on top forever have been replaced by a monkey or something, right? You don't know, right? So, but, you know, I like keeping one deck just so you can spring, like, Grim Player Jund on unsuspecting people, right? I mean, they never see the Strangleroot Geist coming, right?
Keeping people honest. I see. Yeah.
But, like Red and 6, like you can just take the most broken cards imaginable, and 2 years from now, they may not be played anymore. Red and 6 could be bulk. We don't know. So it's a little risky, I think, to just kind of hold on to your $1,000 Modern decks.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, obviously, keep the cards that you love and your fun cards. Like, no one's saying to do that, but I wouldn't want to hold on to, like, a Modern deck thinking that it's still going to be good 10 years from now or something. Like, I would just be, I think it's too much of a risk. But anyway, we have one fish mail for today. I think someone asked... I appreciate the question. Sebi DC3244. Can you go over how you would sideboard against all the top 5 meta decks in Standard? I think that's a little much for a fish mail, Sebi, but that is a good question. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. The actual question, though, is something to do with rotation we haven't talked about. It's from Hilv16, at Hilv16. Says, with this new Standard rotation, what do you think about them pulling in the last rotated block into the current Standard? So adding sets, Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, Forgotten Realms, it might shake up the meta. This is something we didn't really talk about. Is the solution to shaking up the meta adding more cards? Like, what if they took the cards that rotated last year and were like, hey, guess what? They're legal again. Here's a bunch more cards. Figure it out. Would that?
So, wait, would Fable and
so basically just make an announcement that said those sets are legal. As of Monday, Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, Forgotten Realms are legal in Standard again until the next rotation in 2024. Like adding those 4 sets into Standard rather than trying to ban cards and take cards out of Standard.
What happens then if like Goldspan and Fable like start playing together, right? Like there's like,
oh boy,
you know what I mean? Like then we really have to kill the token, right? Like and then you also get to copy Goldspan and that's there's a lot there that I don't know if that fixes the format or does that give us more, like, you know, we're done with that format, right? But then we would have to see Magma Opus, you know, with like Hinata again as well. So like I don't know. I don't think that answers the problem, although it would be that, like, also Richard had mentioned that could just literally be Pioneer. We would just be playing Pioneer.
I don't think it would solve the problem either, because the best deck in Pioneer is essentially the same deck that's the best deck in Standard at this point. Like, it's a lot of the same cards. So I don't think that's going to just dethrone the format, although interesting idea. I guess I like the thinking outside the box aspect of the question, although practically I don't know if I think it would help. And then you also got the financial ramifications of just like randomly making these old cards legal. Are you going to reprint them somehow? How expensive are they? MDFCs would be sweet though. I could use some more MDFC.
You gotta use RNG. You just choose a random set from Magic's history. So tomorrow's like, surprise, revised is in standard. You're like, what? Sarah Angel? Shivan Dragon? Let's go.
Yes, that would be interesting. Whew, and expensive. But anyway, Richard, if people want to send in fish mail for next week's podcast, how do they go about doing that?
All right, you can send them to @MTGGoldfish on Twitter using the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 434 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard and Graham, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the BNR and anything else in the world of Magic. So, until then, have a spectacular week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.